everyone, my name is Sierra and I'm running to be the greatest baker of 2020. So I think to be the greatest baker, you need to be willing to share some tips to help other people improve their baking as well. And if you read my profile, you know my first tip is to have forgiveness for yourself and to have some patience as well. So the first thing is patience. Baking can take a lot of time and a lot of concentration. And if you are rushing through your recipes, it's very likely you'll make a mistake that could also be disastrous. You have to start all over again. So best thing to do is take your time, do it once, but do it correctly. As far as forgiving yourself, sometimes you mess up, you make a mistake, and that's totally okay. The goal here, though, is really to learn from your mistake. Don't dwell on it and make yourself upset about it because you really can't fix it. The best thing to do is think about it for next time, think about what you've done and what you can do better, and then move on. So you want to make sure you give yourself time to process your mistake, give yourself the forgiveness that it's okay, and then learn from it and move on. So my next tip is going to be what you're watching here, which is all about setting yourself up for success. This is also called mise en place, which basically means putting everything in its place. So when I first started baking, what I would do is I would read the recipe, and I would gather all my ingredients and measure as I go. Sometimes I wouldn't even gather all my ingredients. I would literally go to the pantry as I needed something, which is not the best way to bake, especially not to be a consistent baker or to be the greatest baker. And so I've started using the process of mise en place, which I think of as, again, setting myself up for success. For this, I'm going to measure everything out beforehand. That way when it comes time to add it to the bowl, I know it's prepped and ready. I also know by using this method, I don't forget anything. So here you're watching me mise en place for 3 batches of cupcakes. And if I were to measure these out one by one as I was baking it, it's very likely I would think I've added something that I didn't or forget to add it completely. For example, I've been making loaves of bread before, just one loaf of bread, and I've forgotten the salt, which is like a quarter of the ingredients of my bread. So I was making bread with flour, water, yeast, and salt. And I forgot the salt because I was rushing through my bread recipe and I left the salt in my cabinet. I did not set myself up for success. I've also forgotten things like my baking soda or baking powder in cakes and cupcakes. And I've also forgotten things like eggs in my enriched dough, which again is a major part of my ingredient list. So I've now taken the time every time I bake to set myself up for success. And I like to set myself up for success with 2 batches. So I like to do a wet batch and a dry batch, assuming my recipe has both those steps. So for cupcakes, there is a wet and a dry. And so your first part you saw was me doing the dry ingredients, which dry ingredients include flour, salt, baking soda, baking powder, and any spices I'm using. The wet includes sugar, butter, any type of flavorings like vanilla. Also, for here, my butternut squash, and I'm making butternut squash cupcakes. Also things like water or milk, depending on what your recipe needs. And this way, I know that all of my ingredients are prepped and ready. So I like to do this method of 2 batches of wet and dry because for cupcakes and cakes, you typically need to cream your butter and sugar, which makes sure you have enough air for your recipe. However, if you're doing an all-in-one, by all means, just measure all of it into one bowl and do your all-in-one method. All in all, if you're looking to be a more consistent baker to have your bakes come out perfectly every time, I highly, highly, highly suggest that you mise en place because as you can see here, I have prepped 3 batches of cupcakes that I know will come out absolutely perfect, at least from a recipe standpoint, because I've measured everything beforehand. So thanks so much for watching and hope you vote me Greatest Baker 2020.